Good afternoon and welcome. Again, you are tuned into the Western Rail Yard Modifications Public Scoping Meeting. Just doing a quick AV check for our live stream on YouTube to ensure everything is working properly before we kick off the meeting. If everything is working properly, we will go ahead and kick off the meeting in just a few moments at 2 p.m. Thanks, everyone. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome. Again, you are tuning into the Western Rail Yard Modifications Public Scoping Meeting, City Environmental Quality Review number 24 DCP 091M. My name is Stephanie Shalou, and I'm the Director of the Environmental Assessment and Review Division here at the New York City Department of City Planning. Evren Olker-Kajar is the Deputy Director of EARD, and she will be co-hosting today's meeting. In the event of any technical challenges on my end, Evren will be taking over on my behalf. We appreciate your patience as we get up and going with this meeting, and appreciate you spending part of your afternoon with us here today. We will hear from everyone who wishes to speak at this meeting today, and the meeting will remain open until we've heard from all of our speakers. We also welcome written comments and testimony through 5 p.m. on April 1st, Monday, April 1st, 2024. And we provide written comments the same time and attention and consideration as we do to comments provided live at this meeting today. Next slide. Perfect. If we can go to slide 1. Thank you. We will now proceed to the public scoping meeting for the Western Rail Yard Modifications project. Again, let me note for the record that the City Environmental Quality Review, or CEQR number for the proposal, is 24DCP091M. Today's date is March 21st, 2024, and the time is approximately 2:02 p.m. Slide 3, please. Again, my name is Stephanie Shalou, and I'm the Director of Environmental Assessment and Review Division here at the Department of City Planning, and I will be chairing today's scoping meeting. The Department of City Planning is acting on behalf of the City Planning Commission as the lead agency for the proposal's environmental review. As lead agency, the department will be responsible for overseeing the preparation and completion of the Environmental Impact Statement, or EIS, for the Western Rail Yard Modifications proposal. Next slide. Joining me are several colleagues of mine from the Department of City Planning. As I mentioned, Evren Olkar-Kajar, Deputy Director of EARD, is here today. Jamison Mitchell in EARD is the project manager for the proposal's environmental review. Andy Cantu is a team leader in the department's Manhattan office, and Abby Ryder is the project manager for the Western Rail Yards modification proposal in the Manhattan office. I'll also mention that there are a host of members of our team that are supporting run and ensure this meeting is running smoothly in the background. So thanks to all of our colleagues working in the background to run this meeting today. Next slide. Today, we are here to receive your comments on the draft scope of work for the Western Rail Yard Modifications proposal. The draft scope of work identifies the subjects to be analyzed in the upcoming draft environmental impact statement, or DEIS, and describes the methodologies that will be used in those analyses. The draft scope materials are available on the Department of City Planning website and available through the Zoning Applicant Portal, or ZAP. Next slide. The purpose of today's public scoping meeting is to allow for public participation in the preparation of the DEIS at the earliest possible stage. Specifically, scoping allows the public to help shape the DEIS before it is written. Toward that end, the department, as lead agency, will receive verbal testimony on the draft scope of work from elected officials, government agencies, local community board, and the public. We also welcome written comments on the draft scope of work, and again, those can be submitted through 5 p.m. Monday, April 1st, 2024. Next slide. At the end of the written comment period, the department as lead agency will review all comments, those we hear today, as well as any written comments that we've received. After carefully reviewing all comments, the department will decide what changes, if any, need to be made to the draft scope of work, and we will issue a final scope of work. It is that final scope of work that serves as the basis for preparing the draft environmental impact statement. Next slide. Today marks the beginning of the written comment period on the draft scope of work. I'd like to emphasize that no decisions will be made today regarding the draft scope of work. The purpose of today's meeting is to allow the public to provide their comments on the draft scope of work, allow the department to listen to those comments and consider them. It's important for all voices to be heard today. Next slide. I'll now summarize the structure of today's meeting, which will be divided into 3 parts. During the first part, the applicant team will make a brief presentation describing the Western Rail Yard Modifications proposal. The applicant team will provide a summary of the environmental review's draft scope of work. This will be about 15 to 20 minutes. During the second part of the meeting, the department will hear testimony from elected officials, government agency, and those speaking on behalf of the local community board. And then during the third and final part of the meeting, we'll receive testimony from members of the general public. Next slide. On to a few logistics for today's meeting. If you wish to speak and plan to access the meeting online using a computer, tablet, or smartphone, please remember to register through the Western Rail Yard Modifications public scoping meeting page of the NYC Engage portal, which can be found at this link, www.nyc.gov/NYC-engage. A link to join us and provide your testimony will be emailed to you after you've completed the registration process on the NYC Engage website, and we will add you to our speakers queue. Next slide. When it is your turn to speak, your name will be called and you will be promoted to panelist. This will allow you to unmute your microphone and the ability to turn on your camera if you wish. There's a short period that it appears that you're no longer in the meeting. Don't be alarmed, you'll automatically rejoin the meeting as a panelist. Then we'll ask you to convey your remarks. And to allow us to hear from everyone who wishes to speak, we ask everyone to limit the remarks to 3 minutes. If you're viewing us online, a 3-minute countdown clock will run on the screen. At the 3-minute mark, your time will expire. At that point, you will be asked to conclude your remarks. And as a reminder, if you do choose to turn on your camera, we will be able to see you. And as another reminder, promoting speakers takes a moment, so please appreciate your patience. Next slide. For anyone joining by phone today, if you wish to provide testimony, I will indicate when to do so, and you can dial *9 on your telephone. Please listen for me to call out the last 3 digits of your phone number, and at that point, you'll be given the ability to share your testimony. You will need to press *6 to unmute your telephone, and we'll be able to hear you through the meeting. When your testimony is complete or your 3 minutes have expired, whichever comes first, you'll press *6 again to mute yourself. We would like to encourage dial-in participants who wish to provide testimony to register by way of our dial-in participant hotline, information for which we shared at the beginning of this meeting. Next slide. On to time limits. Speakers from the general public have 3 minutes to provide their testimony. There are a few exceptions to the 3-minute time limit. Elected officials, for example, are given the courtesy of jumping to the front of the queue and are not limited to 3 minutes. For anyone viewing the meeting on live stream and wishing to testify, please be mindful of potential background noise during your testimony and make sure that the live stream is muted when you begin your testimony to avoid hearing an echo. Next slide. If you wish to submit written testimony, it can be submitted to the Department of City Planning. Our mailing address is shown here, 120 Broadway, 31st floor, New York, New York, 10271. Attention, myself, at the Department of City Planning's EARD. The email address to submit comments to us is shown here on the screen, 24dcp091m_dl@planning.nyc.gov. This information is also available on the NYC Engage portal and the Department of City Planning's website at nyc.gov/planning. Again, as a reminder, we'll accept comments through 5 p.m. on Monday, April 1st. Next slide. All right, if you missed any instructions at the beginning of this meeting, please visit NYC Engage for instructions on how to participate and provide testimony. Again, that website is www.nyc.gov/NYC-engage. We will now move on to the first part of our meeting. As I mentioned, this is the time when the applicant team will provide a presentation of their proposed project, to be followed by the environmental consultant summarizing the draft scope of work. So I will now turn it over to Andy Rosen of the applicant team to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Stephanie. I'm Andy Rosen, Chief Operating Officer for Hudson Yards at Related Companies. Related, along with our partners at Oxford Properties, developed the first phase of Hudson Yards. You'll also hear today from Chris Gordon, President of Wynn Development. Wynn is the world's leading resort company, and we're thrilled to be partnered with them on this project. As a brief introduction to Related, we were founded in 1972 as an affordable housing company. Today, we're one of the largest private owners and preservationists of affordable housing in the United States. We're here today to build on our legacy of working with our neighbors in the West Side community, where we've already created over 5,000 units of housing, of which over 2,800 are affordable, as well as commercial headquarters for the world's leading companies, world-class retail, dining, and experiences. Before we move into the technical presentation, it's important to highlight that finishing Hudson Yards will spur tens of thousands of jobs, drive billions of revenue to the city and state, and maximize benefits to our community. Next slide, please. The proposed project occupies the western half of the Long Island Railroad's West Side Yard, shown here in the foreground, with existing portion of Hudson Yards in the background and the Javits Center to the north. Next slide, please. The site is bounded by 12th Avenue to the west, 11th Avenue to the east, West 33rd Street to the north, and West 30th Street to the south. It's located in a C6-4 district and comprises Subdistrict F in the Special Hudson Yards District. Next slide, please. Most of the development site is used as a train yard with a capacity of 386 train cars on 30 tracks. It also contains other Long Island Railroad facilities that support the daily operation of the railroad, including 30 parking spaces for Long Island Railroad workers, accessed by a curb cut off of 12th Avenue. The topography of the development site varies dramatically. Street elevation at the northeast corner at 11th Avenue and West 33rd Street is nearly 30 feet higher than the elevations along 12th Avenue and other parts of the site. These significant differences in grade create the possibility of a platform to be constructed at the elevation of 11th Avenue, with new development and open space located above the rail yard while maintaining the active Long Island Railroad operations underneath. I just want to underscore that point. As we did on the eastern portion of the Hudson Yards, we are working in close coordination with the MTA to ensure the smooth continued operation of commuter rail service during any construction. Next slide, please. Just to briefly introduce our team, the applicant here is WRI Tenant LLC. As you know, we're working with Department of City Planning. Our architect here is Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, and the landscape architect, an important component of this project, is Sasaki and Hollander working together. Environmental consultant AKRF, you will hear from shortly. And now I'm going to turn it over to Kramer Levin, our land use counsel.
Thank you, Andy. The existing zoning regulations for the development site were adopted in 2009. They were intended primarily for residential condominium development on 6 separate development sites with distinct open spaces. The existing regulations don't provide the flexibility needed for the proposed project, which is comprised of 3 buildings with a central open space connecting to Hudson Park and the High Line. The proposed project will fully comply with the key planning commitments agreed upon in 2009. Specifically, the project will deliver 324 units of affordable housing, completing the total commitment for Hudson Yards of 1,100 units, 146,000 square feet of community facility and arts and cultural space, public open space, and ground floor retail. And the amount of public open space will increase from 5.45 acres to 5.63 acres. The proposed project will comply with the previously approved density for the development site, and there will be no change in the underlying C6-4 zoning district or the allowable floor area ratio. Next slide. The proposed project has 3 development parcels, Site A, Site B, and Site C, organized around a unified public open space. Site A, located near the southwestern corner of the development site along West 30th Street, will be developed with a predominantly residential building, which includes affordable housing. Site B, located at West 30th Street and 11th Avenue, will be developed with an office tower containing office space, ground floor retail, space for arts and cultural institutions, and a daycare center. The building may also contain 120,000 square feet for a public school at the option of the School Construction Authority. Sites A and B will be served by 225 as-of-right accessory parking spaces. Site C, located along West 33rd Street on the northern side of the development site, will be developed with a hotel resort with gaming. In addition, LIRR support space will be located in the podium, and additional LIRR infrastructure will be located below grade. Site C will be served by 500 accessory parking spaces that will require a special permit. Overall, there will be 725 parking spaces in the proposed project. Next slide. There will be 5.63 acres of publicly accessible open space, including lawns, landscaped areas, walking paths, seating areas, and plazas. The open space has been designed to function as an extension of Hudson Park to the east and will provide an overlook above the Hudson River and direct connections to the High Line to the west. The open space design under the 2009 zoning was interrupted by private streets and punctuated by 6 separate building footprints, while the proposed design concentrates the open space in the middle of the site. Next slide. The grade of West 33rd Street along the northern edge of the development site slopes significantly between 11th and 12th Avenues. This portion of West 33rd Street is used primarily for the parking of police vehicles, including on the sidewalks, and it's currently closed to through traffic by the NYPD. A single oversized curb cut is located along the northern side of the street to provide access to the former Javits truck marshaling yard. Next slide. The grade of West 33rd Street between 11th and 12th Avenues will be adjusted to roughly match the elevation of 11th Avenue and align with the ground floor of the proposed project. This will promote public access, including ADA compliant access to the public open space and the High Line, and provide access to the proposed project. The realignment will avoid a long blank wall at street level in front of the train tracks that would be present if the street were not raised. Next slide. A public staircase and elevator will be constructed by the applicant at the northwest corner of the development site to provide an additional access point to the High Line and the public open space. And now I'd like to turn it over to Chris Gordon of WIN to do the next portion of the presentation.
Thank you, Elise. My name is Chris Gordon. I'm the president of WIN Development. That's the real estate arm of WIN Resorts. Briefly, WIN Resorts is the creator and operator of 5-star luxury resorts around the world. We're in Las Vegas, we're in Boston, we're in Asia, we're building now in the UAE, and of course, we would very much like to build in New York. I'm going to put some context around the numbers that Elise and Andy have given you and sort of show you what the building would look like. In front of you, you see a rendering. That's an 80-story tower on parts of Hudson Yards, which would include about 1,738 keys in that hotel. Below that is what we call a podium. The podium is sort of the more horizontal part of the project where we have gaming. There's 2 floors of gaming. We tend to call us a resort, not a casino, because about 8% of the building would be gaming and about 4% of the overall Western Hudson Yards would be gaming. So it's an important component, but it's only one component. Above that, we have a ballroom, we have some meeting space, we have a small spa, and we have other things, including food and beverage, wrapped around that podium space. Next. This is a view from 11th Avenue looking from the Eastern Yards, and what you'll see on this is how the building starts to engage the street. We do a lot of work on placemaking and master planning around the world, and we try to figure out the context of where we are and how we should fit into that and not just plop down some sort of a building. You'll see on the far right to this, there's a very generous lobby opening where people will be able to come off the extensive mass transit and be able to come right directly into the lobby and into whatever part of the building they're going to. They can also enter the building from the park. They can enter the building from 33rd Street. And we've tried to make the building very much engaging with the surroundings around it, including 11th Avenue, because obviously that's a major part of the project. Next. This is a view from the south looking over the park and into the podium, and then, of course, the tower above that. Beyond that is the Javits Center. To the left is the river. One thing to say on this slide is that as a company, we're very fortunate. We've been recognized with a lot of awards, but one area we've been particularly recognized for is sustainability, and our buildings tend to be very, very green, and we'll elaborate on that in our filings. But for this meeting, we want to ensure people that we think a lot about sustainability. We also think a lot about, as I mentioned, how to engage the building, and this park view shows how the park actually engages with the building, where there'll be different uses of the building that are transparent out of the park. There'll be entryways, there'll be patios, there'll be different areas where the building will be fully engaged with the park. You can see on the roof, there's more green space on the roof. And then, of course, the tower rises above that. Next. This is the park that Elise talked about. This is an over a 5-acre park, which in an urban setting is a gigantic park. You can also see the High Line in the foreground. We've spent a lot of time and effort trying to figure out how to make a public park that would be a place that everybody wants to be. This is a place for anybody could use. This open to the public, made for public events, made for people walking around, jogging, doing things. It also is very compatible with the resort and of course the other buildings to the north and to the south, to the east and the south, I should say. But generally view this as a public park that will be we think, a great benefit of the project. Next. Finally, this is the drop-off area on 33rd Street. As Elise mentioned, 33rd would be brought up to level, which makes this part of the neighborhood work, we think, much better for access to the building. This front would be for drop-off and also for pedestrians entering, as we talked about. We should say this building would only have about 500 parking spaces, and for a resort this size, you normally have many, many more than that. The reason is this is New York. There's incredible public access. There's transit, there's train lines, there's buses, there's boats. So we're really minimizing the parking because we really understand that people don't want to have ample parking to encourage cars. So this drop-off area is for convenience, but it's not meant to be obviously highly utilized. With that, I'm going to turn this over next to who's coming up. Elise, I think it's back to you.
Me, next slide. I'm just gonna summarize the proposed land use actions that are required to facilitate this project. So the Western Rail Yards is sub-district F of the special Hudson Yards district. In that context, the required land use actions are first, a text amendment to a special permit applicable in sub-district F to allow modifications to use and open space in addition to height and setback. Second, the grant of the special permit to allow modifications to the prescriptive regulations of sub-district F to allow a 3-site development with a central open space instead of a 6-site development with multiple open spaces. Third, the grant of another special permit to allow additional spaces in a parking garage to be located on the northern portion of the development site. Then an authorization to locate a curb cut on a wide street. An amendment of the city map to adjust the grades of West 33rd Street between 11th and 12th Avenues. The modification of the previously approved restrictive declaration, and as I mentioned, the key planning commitments will be retained. And then a revocable consent to permit the stair and elevator in the 33rd Street sidewalk at 12th Avenue. In addition, as a related action, the project will require discretionary approval from the New York State Gaming Facility Location Board for the proposed gaming facility. And now I'll turn it over to Patrick, who will talk about the environmental review for this project.
Thank you, Elise. Good afternoon. I'm Patrick Wentriel from EARD. We're the environmental consulting firm preparing the environmental impact statement, or EIS, that will assess the potential environmental impacts of the proposed project. An EIS considers 3 conditions: the existing site condition, the no action condition, and the proposed project or with action condition. The basis for identifying potential significant adverse impacts is the comparison of the proposed project to the no action condition. The EIS will consider a 2030 analysis here. The no action condition is what would happen at the site in 2030 if the proposed actions are not approved. The no action condition is based on development projections analyzed in the 2009 FEIS that have been updated to reflect current market conditions. The no action condition assumes 3 buildings with 2.2 million square feet of office space, 2.5 million square feet of residential space, which is about 3,454 units, 164,500 square feet of retail space, 146,000 square feet of school, cultural, and daycare space, 4.3 acres of open space, 225 parking spaces, and support space for the Long Island Railroad. Next slide, please. The with action condition is the proposed project, which includes roughly 1.2 million square feet of residential development, or 1,507 units, including 324 affordable units, 2.2 million gross square feet of commercial office space, just under 25,000 square feet of retail space, roughly 2.7 million square feet of resort space, including an approximately 1,750 key hotel and gaming facility, 146,000 square feet of school, cultural, and daycare space, 5.63 acres of open space, 725 parking spaces, and Long Island Railroad support space. As indicated, the proposed project is expected to be complete and operational by 2030. As previously noted, the applicant is seeking a license from the New York State Gaming Facility Location Board to operate a gaming facility on the site, which is subject to a separate state approval process to designate locations for such licenses. Therefore, the EIS also presents an alternative scenario for environmental analysis purposes that includes more office, retail, and market rate residential space in place of the gaming and resort program. Next slide, please. The EIS will be prepared in accordance with the CEQR technical manual. It will consider 19 technical areas of analysis that follow the methodologies in the manual. In addition, the draft EIS will include a project description, an alternatives analysis, an analysis of mitigation measures for any identified significant adverse impact, and the identification of any unavoidable significant adverse impacts. With that, I will turn the meeting back to Ms. Shalhoub of City Planning.
Stephanie, you're muted.
Thank you. Good catch. Thank you, applicant team, for the presentation. Applicant team, you are fine to turn off your cameras to preserve our bandwidth. Thank you. We will now move on to part 2 of the public scoping meeting. At this time, we will be receiving testimony from elected officials, community board leaders, and government agencies. When it is your turn to speak, your name will be called. You will be promoted to panelist, which will allow you to unmute your microphone and the ability to turn on your camera if you wish. There will be a short period when it appears that you're no longer in the meeting. Don't be alarmed, as you'll automatically rejoin the meeting as a panelist. If anyone experiences technical difficulties that prevent you from sharing your testimony, we'll pause and move on to our next speaker to allow for troubleshooting to happen in the background. If this happens and you need further assistance, please visit the how-to guides on the NYC Engage webpage for assistance. Also for assistance, callers can dial into the phone number shown at the bottom of the screen, 877-853-5247. When prompted for a meeting ID, dial 618-237-7396. And the password is 1. All right, we will move to our speakers in this group of elected officials, government agencies, and those speaking on behalf of the community board. In this group, we have one speaker, Paul Devlin. Paul Devlin speaking on behalf of the community board. Paul Devlin will promote you to panelist, and you'll be able to provide your testimony. These speakers are not time limited, so we won't show a timer now.
Hello.
Good afternoon. Welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thank you for all of your time today. As a reminder, my name is Paul Devlin. I'm the co-chair of the Clinton Hell's Kitchen Land Use Committee on Manhattan's Community Board 4. To begin, I'd like to state that we wish this entire proposal was not happening. In 2009, we negotiated for more housing as an overall component of Hudson Yards, including permanently affordable housing, which are key elements of the Western Rail Yard Plan. Any changes to the specified zoning and building sites would be out of scope with the planned district and counter the signed agreements. Given that the city and state administrations have centered housing on their agendas, Community Board 4 would like to work with the city, state, and the developer to move the current Western Rail Yards project forward to help address our housing crisis. Any action to toss aside the painstaking development plan and reducing housing possibilities by up to 4,000 dwelling units is an offense to those who worked on the original plan. That being said, since DCP has decided to move forward with the draft scope to consider changing this critical housing opportunity, we've already identified 4 fundamental and fatal flaws with the draft scope. First, The no action plan does not incorporate the full build-out of the 2009 plan. The developer claims that because residential development takes longer than commercial development, that the no action proposal is only what could be built by 2030. For an accurate comparison of no action to proposed action, then full build-out using the current allowable zoning must be considered rather than what can be built by 2030. Second, the timeline for this analysis therefore needs to be at a minimum through 2040. Given that the Eastern Rail Yards has taken approximately 15 years to reach a point of full use, it is inconsistent to say that the development of the Western Rail Yards will take less time. The analysis of impacts should use a realistic and experienced timeline, which would mean at a minimum through 2040. Third, the impact area is too small. One member of our committee said, "You can see Hudson Yards from space." A study area of 1/4 mile is insufficient. Moynihan Hall and Penn Station is approximately 1/2 mile from the Western Rail Yards, and it should be expected that most people traveling to the new commercial towers will come through New Jersey Transit or Long Island Railroad, terminating at Moynihan Hall. We ask that the study area increase to a minimum of 1/2 mile. And fourth, the draft scope needs to study using a 500-year flood plan. The developer recognizes that the site is within the 100-year floodplain map and will make considerations based on its location below sea level. Unfortunately, the city has experienced many more flood incidents over the past 30 years that would indicate that our global climate crisis is having a greater impact than what was anticipated in 1991 when the CEQR manual set those standards. We ask that the scope analyze the 0.2% floodplain impacts. And as a closing statement, we should recognize that the proposed casino is not guaranteed to come to this site. But if you act now to change the 2009 plan to accommodate this proposal, then we'll end up simply with an extension of the Eastern Rail Yards. We will be submitting further written comments with much more detail after our full board has the opportunity to offer all of our thoughts. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you for your thoughtful comments, and we look forward to receiving the written testimony as well. Thank you. I'm going to check with my colleagues. That was the only speaker that we had in the part 2 of elected officials, government agencies, and community board representatives. So we will now move to part 3 of the public scoping meeting, where members of the general public are invited to speak for up to 3 minutes. So we'll move to our 3-minute time tracker. Again, when it's your turn to speak, we'll call your name and we'll promote you to panelist, which will allow you to unmute and turn on your camera if you wish. When your 3 minutes have expired, we'll ask you to conclude your remarks. And again, if anyone is experiencing technical difficulties, please feel free to visit NYC Engage that have resources to support. All right, so we will now move to our speakers who have registered in this group. First, we have Patrick Hazari, to be followed by Omar Ahmed. Patrick Hazari, you'll be promoted to panelist in just a moment.
Hi, Stephanie. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Great. Thank you. Hello. I am Patrick Hazari, Senior Director of Planning, Design, and Construction at Friends of the High Line. Thank you for the opportunity to give testimony today to help ensure that any and all impacts of the proposed rezoning of the Western Rail Yards are carefully studied. We have been listening to the community's concerns and are aligned with their perspective on many points. There are also additional issue areas we'd like to raise today and have considered as part of the Environmental Impact Statement scoping document. Community concerns are paramount here because the West Side community invested deeply in the process that led to a set of commitments memorialized in the 2009 Special Hudson Yards District zoning. The High Line is an important public amenity, and we have heard the community express concerns about how the plans will affect it. My remarks will address concerns regarding open space, shadows, and zoning and land use. The impact on the High Line's open space needs to be studied for both the proposed project massing and alternative scenario. This should consider the extent and duration of the rezoning's impacts on public access to the High Line during construction and following construction. The quality of the open space in the proposed plan itself has been altered. A once generous open lawn that steps down to the Highline has been replaced with a narrow, topographically challenged space that erodes any opportunity for a dialogue between the Highline and the open space on the western rail yards. In addition, key sightlines from the Highline and the open spaces should be prioritized. The impact of wind, both at street level and at Highline level, where wind speeds can be up to 20 miles per hour stronger, should be analyzed. The study area should be extended to 9th Avenue to capture the full portion of Phase 1 of Hudson Yards, Manhattan West, as well as the future development site at the Javits Marshalling Yard parking lot. An analysis studying the impact of shadows in and around the Highline is critical and should consider all seasons in any future development sites. We would additionally like to see an analysis of potential effects of the building's glare and reflection on the Highline's flora and fauna. The Highline is an elevated sidewalk that pedestrians use and should be evaluated alongside the pedestrian experience at street level. The primary assessment of urban design and visual resources should give equal weight to both. And lastly, the special Hudson Yards district rezoning thoughtfully considered the relationship between the eastern rail yards and the western rail yards from a land use perspective. The eastern rail yards was centered around commercial activities with tall buildings, and the western rail yards was a counterpoint, proposing residential use in shorter buildings that step down to the river. In closing, this year, Friends of the Highline is celebrating 15 years of the opening of the first section of the Highline and 25 years of the organization's founding. Friends of the Highline is deeply rooted and invested in the community that it runs through. The community's voice was critical in the early advocacy work of the Highline and the Hudson Yards zoning plan and must be prioritized as a scoping document and rezoning plan is considered.
Thank
The
you.
rezoning-
Your time has expired. We'll of course accept your written testimony if there was more to that. Thank you for being here and for your testimony. Our next speaker is Omar Ahmed. Omar Ahmed, we will promote you to panelist and you will be able to provide your testimony. Omar Ahmed.
Yes.
Hi, we have indicated here that you will be using a translator.
No.
Oh,
No.
okay. So we'll go to the 3-minute timer then.
Okay, good.
Welcome.
Hello, how are you? This is Omar Ahmed. I'm very happy and glad to be in here with you guys. I'm the owner of the Hampton Marketplace around the corner on 312 on 11th Avenue. And I'm writing here. I'm supporting and providing related companies and wine resort to Development Premium Resort in New York City. I was here 5 years ago before the first project to start, and it was the whole neighborhood was quiet, and there was no activities and nothing was going on. So when the first opened doors, it was nothing going on in the neighborhood. Quiet as years, right? I saw community grow and transform related company, invasion, demonic, the neighborhood when they started doing the work. It was, stuff changed on business, on a neighborhood. My business is, open, around the clock. And they was, it's a great thing what they did, since the beginning. And, I support this project. That project will bring tourists, it bring, a lot of people to the neighborhood. It will be great, to the city. And, and it's really right now as we speak, it's talking for themselves, that thing what they did is, the best area in the city. There is no other, place what they did. They did a tremendous, the best job, we ever seen. And, I definitely, say yes to this project. This project is gonna, it's just gonna give the city, the neighborhood from the better to the better. They really saved a lot of businesses around here before they came from the first project. They save a lot of business, and there is a lot of galleries, and me, including me, in here in this neighborhood. Without them, we was not gonna be, in business. So I definitely, say yes to this project.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for your testimony and for being here today. We appreciate you taking
You're
the time.
welcome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. I am checking with our back of house. It looks like that is the end of our registered speakers. So at this point in time, we are going to, you can go to our information slide. So if anyone else who's viewing the live stream on YouTube or was not able to register earlier, who wishes to speak at this time, we will ask you at this point to visit NYC Engage to register to speak for this meeting. Apologies for the typo. This is the Western Rail Yard Modifications Scoping meeting. So at this point, we're going to take a 5-minute pause and wait for anyone else who may have wished to speak, who has not yet registered, to have a chance to do so, or to dial our dial-in participant hotline shown in red at the bottom of this screen if you had any difficulty registering, so that we can walk you through the process. So at this time, we're going to take a 5-minute recess. We'll reconvene at 2:48 p.m. Thank you, and speak to you in just a few more minutes. Good afternoon and welcome back. You are tuning into the remote public scoping meeting for the Western Rail Yard modifications proposal. Again, for the record, the City Environmental Quality Review, or CEQR number, is 24DCP091M. My name is Stephanie Shalou, and I'm the director of the New York City Department of City Planning's Environmental Assessment and Review Division. We're currently on part 3 of this public scoping meeting, where members of the public are invited to speak for up to 3 minutes. We were taking a brief pause to allow anyone who may not have registered to have a chance to do so. Checking our back of house, it does not look like we had any additional registered speakers during our pause. So we will now move to close the meeting. If anyone had difficulty providing testimony today, please recall that you can submit written testimony. If we can go to our slide with the ways to submit our written testimony. Perfect. Thank you. The written testimony can be provided via NYC Engage through DCP's website or by emailing or mailing your comments to the addresses shown on this screen. Again, our email is 24dcp091m_dl@planning.nyc.gov. And our mailing address is 120 Broadway, 31st floor, New York, New York, 10271. The deadline for submitting those written comments is 5 p.m. on Monday, April 1st, 2024. The time is now 2:50 p.m. and this public meeting is concluded. Thank you everyone for joining. Have a great afternoon.